Hi, I'm Garmbreak1, and this is Midgardia's Creator Corner. I'm here today with Dtothefourth. How's it going?
Hello, I'm doing all right. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. So,
Hmm.
why don't you tell me a little bit about what it is you do?
Yeah, so I'm best known for ROM hacking, especially in the Super Mario World community. I make a lot of custom code and assets and things for people to use in their, custom Mario levels and stuff like that. Professionally, my big thing is crowd control. So, yeah, what we do is add online interactivity into games on Twitch so viewers can, make stuff happen in the games in real time. So
Right
that's
on.
kind of my day job. But
Right on. Yeah, cool. Crowd control's really cool. I have a crowd control T-shirt somewhere.
get nice, yeah.
Yeah, it's how did that project come about? Um, Originally?
Crowd control itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, Cat makes games. I don't know if you're familiar with them. She actually came up with it all on her own. She had a product called, I think, Bit Races, which was kind of early crowd control. And I think Jaku and them found her and kind of turned that into a bigger, more professional product and everything.
Nice. Yeah, and there's support for a ton of games now, a substantial portion of which you've worked directly on, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think we're up over 100 now, I think, at
Oh,
this
wow.
point, and something like, yeah, probably 30 to 40 of them were all either created or taken over by me, yeah.
What's the most unusual one you've done personally?
Ooh, unusual. I mean, getting over it's certainly up there, because that's a pretty silly game already, and throwing crowd control in the mix is a little wild. And then I also did one that's really obscure, Dragon Crystal for the Game Gear,
Wow,
because that
that's
was more
yeah.
that was more of a personal project because it's kind of an old nostalgic game for me. But
It's a good way to draw interest to something like that.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, obscure game on a pretty obscure handheld is pretty up there. It's no Shining Force, I'll say that.
that's true. I am working on crowd control for that right now.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, yeah.
All yogurt, all the is it yogurt or jogurt? I feel like it's supposed to be yogurt.
You know, it depends on the localization. I think in some areas they put the J in there, and some they don't. So I don't really know actually for sure what it is officially, but
Yeah, fair enough. So, how about ROM hacking? How'd you? That's esoteric, to say the least.
yeah.
What do you do in that field?
Um, so yeah, like I said, my big thing is Super Mario World. I grew up with that, as a kid playing Super Mario World, and back in the late 90s, I want to say, I actually started poking around with the game a bit, trying to make custom levels and stuff. And I kind of got started being one of the first people making an editor for the game, because the tool that's used to make custom levels for it, called Lunar Magic, didn't exist until 2000. So back then, in like 98, I was kind of making my own tool. And then actually, Lunar Magic came out and was way ahead of where I was at, so I actually took off and moved on to Shining Force at that point.
Yeah,
So I made the ROM hacking tools for Shining Force in that period for
nice.
like a decade or so before coming back to Super Mario World and kind of connecting with people on Twitch and getting popular making custom tools for it there.
Yeah, you've been involved in a lot of the really popular Kaizo hacks, like believe Grand Prix World 2, you had some work in, and
Not much really for two. I hadn't quite hit popularity at that point, but I'm doing a lot for three, a whole lot for three. So
nice. I'm looking forward to it. You've done
yeah,
some ROM hack races levels as well and stuff like that, I think.
yeah, those are fun. Just kind of ways to show off some of the cool stuff I can do. Like they had the race where you could rewind time inside of Mario and everything.
Oh yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, that was a pretty tough one to make. Yeah, kind of really showcasing what you can do if you dig into the code a lot.
So, what kind of unique challenges are there working on like ancient hardware?
Yeah, it's tough. One of the big ones is that you can't just, write code for it in like C or C sharp or in a modern language. You're stuck writing assembly code, which is slow and tedious and takes a lot of work to get anything to do, and you have to really understand how computers work to kind of write assembly code. And then, of course, the hardware itself is extremely limited. There's not a lot of memory or power to work with on the old, like Super Nintendo.
Yeah, and you can't use any of the funky tricks that Nintendo used for a few of their cartridges, where there'd be like an
Yeah.
inbuilt like graphics and air graphics card or what have you for like they did for Star Fox.
Well, actually, it's interesting. One of the people who works on Lunar Magic actually wrote a patch that adds that chip into Super Mario World, like behind the scenes, so you can actually make use of that chip in Mario hacks.
Oh, nice.
So it is technically possible, but yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. I also
Mhm.
you mentioned Lunar Magic came out in like 2000. That is a long time ago, and
Yeah,
is yeah.
and the original author is still updating it.
Wow.
It's definitely a passion project, I assume.
Yeah, and there was yeah not much before that. There would have been like the original Kaizo Mario would have predated that. I think I could be wrong.
Um, no, as far as I know, there aren't any hacks that I've seen that actually predate Lunar Magic. I think the first official Kaizo Mario Worlds came out in around '05, I want to say. Um, Part of the problem is bef- that was before YouTube as well, so
Right.
if people were making any hacks somehow, they didn't, for the most part, get publicly visible or catch on.
It would have just been shuffled around on like oh god, not even flash drives. would have been wouldn't have been floppy disks.
Yeah.
Might have been floppy disks. Also,
Yeah,
apparently, the
so
original Kaizo Mario World was 2007. So never
oh,
mind,
the
I'm
original
completely wrong.
7, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
uh,
Yeah, I knew one of them came out in '07, but I wasn't sure if that was 2 or 1, but
yeah. 2007 was one, 2008 is two, and 2012 was three.
gotcha. Yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
Mhm.
And that's blown up into like a whole scene of its own. Like I guess I've been talking, sort of assuming that my viewers know what Kaizo is. Can you explain Super Mario Kaizo a bit?
Yeah, so the gist of Kaizo is essentially taking Super Mario World and rebuilding levels that have a really difficult kind of single path of obstacles that are really kind of visually impressive and take a lot of skill to pull off. The original Mario games are all very kind of open world. You kind of walk around and do whatever you want. But in Kaizo hacks, you don't stop moving once you start. You're bouncing off of shells and going through tiny gaps and everything, and they're really impressive to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I've a few friends of mine are in that scene. And even just the most I guess basic air quotes tricks like the shell jumps into the wall and stuff. They're really hard.
They are. Yeah, I don't do a lot of playing myself, but I did stream, the first handful of the easier ones, and it's rough.
Yeah, absolutely. Um you've done a lot of level design as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, my big thing is doing, code for little pieces that other people can use in their hacks, but every once in a while, yeah, I like to put together a level to kind of showcase some of the code I can do. So yeah, I think the time rewind one is one of the more impressive ones, but I think actually one of the most technically difficult ones might have been I did a level where it was split screen, so there was a top and a half, bottom half to the level, and they both independently scrolled. So you could have like enemies in the top half and the bottom half that actually scrolled differently, and then you could switch back and forth with the two halves and sort of play like two levels simultaneously. I actually thought that level was pretty cool. I definitely want to see some more people play it. they've only really been showcased, yeah, as you said, in the romhack races, which is kind of a smaller viewership. But
Yeah, which is too bad because like those events tend to be pretty exciting, but they
yeah.
are like in the middle of a Saturday afternoon, unfortunately.
Yeah, and my first level for the ROM hack races was actually when I showed off making a procedurally generated level.
Oh
So a
yeah.
level that builds itself as you're playing, and every time you die, it's totally different. And and that works, even on like Super Nintendo hardware, which
Yeah,
was
I think that was my first exposure to your stuff actually.
yeah, yeah. And as far as I know, I think that was the first real instance of like a fully procedurally generated level. I'm not 100% sure. I know some people had played around with some smaller scale stuff like that, but I don't think anybody had put together like a whole level where like every block was placed by the code as you're playing.
Yeah, because that was like falling through a bunch of hazards and stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think my favorite of yours is the one where you go through like the same sequence of rooms but rotated several times.
There was the GDQ race level that had the puzzle room that rotated.
Yes, that would be the one, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that was for a race event at GDQ where I showed off a couple things. Yeah, I made a code that could like spin the room, and you had to do a puzzle by rotating the room back and forth to free a key.
Yeah. That's some good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and that race level showcased a couple of things that I had done recently. Like I had ported the stacking of enemies from Mario Maker to Super Mario World. Because that's not something you can normally have in Super Mario World. Is like putting a bunch of enemies on top of each other. That which is I think that's actually the most popular thing I ever made for Super Mario World is the enemy stacks. Everybody uses them in their hacks now.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, like the stuff that you can pull off with ROM hacking is incredible, honestly. Like porting mechanics and enemies from other games as well is it's quite the feat, and I'm impressed by your wizardry.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Yeah. For one hack, yeah, I ported an entire boss from Sonic Mania, including like all the graphics and everything, and made it look almost identical to the Sonic Mania version. And it's a lot of work, trying to get all the graphics and everything into the Super Nintendo and everything.
Yeah, because again, it's not, even with the assistance of like Lunar Magic for parts of it, it's not RPG Maker like,
No, no.
and even RPG Maker is not as simple as people think. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot of just staring at a text editor with a bunch of, Greek-looking assembly code. It's yeah, not very accessible for the more complicated stuff for sure.
yeah. So back to crowd control. What's the incentive for a streamer to let their viewers ruin their life?
It's kind of two-part, I think. I think, viewers being able to interact with the games and kind of cause chaos is, I think, kind of fun on both ends. But at the same time, you can also use it for monetization, either for yourself or for charity. So, you can set it up so that if somebody wants to like kill you while you're playing Mario, then they have to pay you $5. And so anytime anybody kills you, they have to spend $5 in bits. And the way that works, which is set up by Twitch, is you get $4 of that, and we as the devs get a 20% cut of $1, which is the split that Twitch forces us to do. But we've also got it set up so you can play for charity as well, and 100% of that money goes directly to charity. We don't take a cut of that then. And I know that's pretty popular. It's a good way to raise funds for a cause or a thing, to get a bunch of people to mess with you while you're playing a game for a charity.
Yeah, absolutely. And not shocking, I'm a big fan of charitable events.
Yeah, yeah,
I wish so many aspects of our society didn't require such events, but we do what we can.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so what are the technical challenges of setting up and working with crowd control from like a dev perspective?
Yeah, there's a lot of really impressive tech that goes into making crowd control work. For every console we support, and sometimes every individual game has to be done completely from scratch, in a totally different way. For the old console games, we connect directly to the to an emulator maybe and play with the game's memory that way. But we also do things like for Super Nintendo and NES, we actually support playing crowd control on the original hardware consoles,
Oh wow.
which is honestly kind of mind blowing. Like it's really wild to like sit down on a real Super Nintendo and have people play with the game over the internet, you know. And that was a really tough one. I actually created the hardware support for the NES, which yeah involved like crazy stuff like writing a networking protocol from scratch in NES assembly, you know. But and then for newer games, it's a lot of like reverse engineering the games and figuring out how they work and having to modify their code and stuff and stare at a debugger for hours on end. Yeah, I'm working on Elden Ring right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
That,
um,
hmm.
yeah, but
I,
it's tough because games like that they're so massive, and the code base is huge, and the amount of stuff you can do in those games is huge, and it takes a lot of work just to figure out how to do simple things sometimes in those games. Figure out how to change the player's health in a PC game,
yeah.
over the internet essentially. Yeah.
I was playing Elden Ring literally yesterday, and I am not a bad
Nice.
enough dude to play crowd control Elden Ring. Maybe for charity, but even then, it's gonna be 4 hours of watching me just die.
Uh, well, there are beneficial effects too, and technically you can turn off the harmful ones. Positive only crowd control.
We love some positivity in the club.
Hmm.
My God, yeah, you said it was like 100 or so games now. I'm just scrolling through the list. That's a lot.
Yep. Yeah, I've done a bunch recently that I'm not sure are on the list or not because they're part of the new 2.0 beta. But I recently did like Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 and
Oh
Darkest
wow,
Dungeon. Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption 2 must have been a challenge because I've heard that even porting it to PC was a struggle from Rockstar's perspective.
Yeah, it was interesting. Fortunately, it uses the same modding engine as GTA 5.
Right.
So I was able to actually port most of the code I'd written for Grand Theft Auto to Red Dead and have it just work.
That's handy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Three different kinds of Minecraft. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for yeah, all the various mod bases. Yeah, man. It's you do some good stuff, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And
yeah. We're getting there for sure.
I also think that this makes you like an important archive of historical like gaming and coding information, which is wild.
Um, yeah, that's true. There are a few games that I probably know more about than anyone else on the planet, like Shining Force 1. I reverse engineered that entire game. And there's stuff like, I fixed a bunch of coding errors and bugs that were in there from the original devs and stuff that nobody knew, about.
Yeah, yeah, I think I linked some of your patches and stuff to a
Yeah.
friend of mine recently.
Yeah, there's actually kind of a funny story to that. Shining Force, I don't know how many people are familiar with that game, but it's basically Fire Emblem, a tactical RPG grid based. And it had a system where you got a defense bonus depending on what type of train you were standing on. And it showed this bonus on the screen. It would just say like train 20% or something. And if you look on all the guides, nobody could decide what it did. People were always theorizing about what the heck this is supposed to do and why it didn't seem to really do anything. Well, it's because it was entirely broken. There was a small bug in the code that made it like pull the tile it was supposed to take effect on from a random spot on the map. So it just basically didn't work at all.
That's I expected it to be it was applying it to like the wrong person, but no, that's way weirder.
Well, I think actually that was effectively what happened. They messed up the stack order, so it pulled a different number for which person it was
Oh,
supposed to look at, and
gotcha. Yeah.
it would look at like a random or non-existent person, and yep. So that's why nobody could figure out what it did because it didn't work.
And there's a lot of stuff like that in,
Yep,
well, even in modern games. At least it gets patched,
definitely,
you know.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah. People talk about how horrible it is that games ship with so many bugs these days, and like, yes, but at least most of them get fixed eventually. Kind of.
Yeah,
Yo, you
and
got.
there's a
Sorry,
oh, I
I was
was gonna
just
say there's a similar story for Mario Brothers 2 where the bomb when you drop it, it tries to do like a little 3 by 3 grid of explosions, breaking blocks and stuff. But the bottom right square of the explosion doesn't exist because they looped over 8 instead of 9 squares. They just put an 8 instead of a 9, basically.
huh.
So yeah, it's just a one number mistake in the code, and yeah, the bomb hitbox is all messed up.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What is the oddest thing like that you've encountered in your endeavors deep in the code?
Uh, that's definitely the oddest bug I've encountered. I've definitely run into some odd code. Like I think there's a semi-famous one in the SMW community where they have a function for multiplying a number by -1 that they call, except that they're writing code in assembly, and the code it takes to call the function to multiply the number by -1 is longer than just the code you would have to write to multiply the number by -1. It's just like entirely wasteful.
Huh.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything useful, and it takes more CPU time than just inverting the number normally. And
That's incredibly strange. Yeah. No.
yeah, it's very weird. Somebody just decided it'd be useful to have a function to multiply a number by -1, I guess.
Easier to memorize than memorizing the actual code to just multiply it by -1, I guess. Sorry, I'm just imagining somebody has like that function written on a like post-it note in assembly on like a monitor. I don't know anything about computers, so you know. Yo, there's an Animorphs game with crowd control.
Yeah, um, it might only have one effect. That was technically sort of a joke. It was a thing at GDQ where they promised as like an incentive with like Kizaron or something that if
Oh yeah,
that yeah
Game Boy
that maybe
Animorphs. Yeah,
yeah.
off topic, but Keyzeron's Animorphs for the GBA, not even GBA. I think Game Boy Color runs are absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
It's I every time it's in Bad Games Block, that's like the only run in GDQ I watch because it's
yeah,
so messed up every year.
yeah. One of those runs is where that came from. We
Oh
said
yeah.
we'd do Animorphs crowd control.
I have to log in with Twitch in order to see if what the effects are, but you know, um, gosh, sorry, I was thinking about the friggin' Animorphs runs. Viewers, if you have not seen Kizaron play Animorphs, go do that after this video. I need your watch time, please. Um, uh, sorry, I read a lot of Animorphs as a kid, so it has a special
Okay.
place in my heart. Um, why are there two entries for Majora's Mask?
I think one is the randomizer.
Oh yeah, right. I always forget about randomizers because I'm a horrible normie and just play games and then don't play them with all the bosses scrambled and all of the weapons mixed up.
Yeah, sometimes when we do crowd control support, we support the randomizers, and occasionally it becomes a separate pack because the randomizer has special things it can do that the original game can't. So we build in some unique effects for the randomizer or whatever. But
Yeah. Does the Super Mario World crowd control play nice with Kaizo hacks?
for the most part, it does. I actually spent a
Oh,
long time making that possible. It took a fair bit of work to get it to where it would work on most Kaizo hacks. I know a few people have done some streams of like Cookie World 2 and elephants and the things with crowd control, Hyper Six, which
Ooh,
are yeah,
that's a drastic change in difficulty from Quickie World 2.
yep, yeah.
I'm gonna guess the Hyper 6 one was Cascade.
Funny enough, I think his Cliffy was
Oh,
doing it. Yeah,
uh, I the stuff that you've done is really impressive, D. Like I can't
okay.
overemphasize how uh, you should write a book. I
Well,
don't
maybe I will.
maybe yeah. Like I don't know exactly how coherent that book would be, but just like here is some like base knowledge about like vintage console coding and stuff like that seems, valuable in a historical sense.
Yeah, I did write a blog post about how I was implemented the hardware support for crowd control on NES. Probably not a fun read for most people, but it's kind of interesting.
How how does that work? Like do you have something you need to plug into it or like
Yeah, so the way the hardware support normally works is you have what's called a flash cart, which is a cartridge that has an SD card slot, so that you can load ROM hacks and stuff onto the console. But a lot of those carts have a USB port,
oh yeah.
and then you can connect that USB port to the computer, and then develop like a communication system over the USB.
God,
Um,
hardware is so cool. Like
yeah, and then to make it work, then what I basically did is took the Game Genie. Anybody even knows what that is anymore?
I remember.
And made a software version of the Game Genie that runs like inside the NES. So we're basically sending commands into that over the USB and telling it to like change this memory address, you know. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
That's wild. I know I keep saying that, but like the amount of I guess creativity and like innovation behind letting you mess with somebody playing Super Mario World on the internet is it's impressive. So, Dee, it's been great talking to you. Where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's kind of tough because I'm sort of in a moving point right now. I do have Twitter, just D to the fourth on Twitter. But I've been kind of in the process of trying to migrate to Mastodon since Twitter has gone crazy recently.
Yeah, I think we call it
Um,
X now.
yeah, I don't know what's going on there. So
God, I hope
um,
that reference isn't intelligible more than like 2 months from now. But
but pretty much I'm D to the fourth everywhere. D to the fourth on Discord, Twitter, Mastodon, Twitch. So I'm sure you'll find me one of those ways.
I do have a final question. I know we're already in the outro phase, but what is the origin of your username?
That's actually a complicated answer. So I used to go by like Rubik's Cuber and stuff, and when I kind of came into the ROM hacking scene and got getting more popular and stuff, I wanted a name that like encapsulated more relevant information about me because Rubik's Cuber wasn't super relevant anymore, and didn't really cover much of my interests at this point. So I actually sat down for a long time and I wanted to find a name that sort of, indirectly referenced a bunch of different things that I do. So like, D to the fourth, the most obvious one is like math, D to the fourth power. And I was a math major in college, so but also, D4 is the queen's pawn opening in chess. D4 could be, the fourth octave D on piano. D4 is a speedrunning category in Super Mario Brothers Lost Levels. D4 is a valid Rubik's cube notation for moving the downside 4 turns. D4 is an assembly register in Sega Genesis programming. So this is kind of this whole list of all the things I tried to mesh together into one name.
Damn, that's multifaceted.
Yep, yep.
Can you help me solve my Rubik's Cube sometime? I bought it like 6 months ago.
Probably, yeah. Normal one I can do easily, yeah, but I have like 100 different types of Rubik's puzzles
Do you want to do that right now?
right now.
It's up
Um,
to you.
Probably be tough to do right now over video. We can look at it. I don't know.
So I have this Rubik's Cube. I bought it for tabletop gaming reasons. I should hold it so you can actually see side. So let's assume this is the top. I'll just rotate it towards me because that seems like the easiest way to do this. What should I do?
Uh, I have no idea how this is going to work over camera trying to
You're right.
do this
Yeah,
from.
because you need every side. Um, I'm a fool. All right, your powers are not omnipotent. So we have established that, but you are very impressed, and I'm very glad to have had you on today.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me for sure.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
All right, you too. Thanks.